to the Late Night Podcast.
And
How
I
you doing?
appreciate you for having me.
Nice to see you. So let's start off talking about this thing that's going on with Kamala Harris. And if you've been paying any attention to it, I want to hear your take on, some there's been people saying that she's not black. Some people saying she is black. What's your take on that?
Well, I think that it's not in dispute whether or not she's black. Um, I think that the only reason why people might be able to take that viewpoint is one, um, because the former President Trump used that specifically to be divisive. And
Okay.
it kind of took because he used the angle um, that actually is a concern to many black people, which is that as a former prosecutor, Kamala Harris um, maybe did have a reputation of not being quote unquote as supportive um, of young black men as many of us would have liked. Um, and so I think that was a specific angle that was used um, to kind of try to take us on, keep our eye, off of the prize. Um, and at the end of the day, I think we just have to look at two opponents, and we have to judge our views based on that, right? And like forget about all the other minutiae that's trying to get in the way.
So her I think her mom's from India and dad's from Jamaica, right? So
Right,
technically, this is a technical idea. For a lot of black people, it's not very technical. But just to explain
right,
to some people that may not be black, because of our unique, and I mean, when I say our, I'm talking about the children of the former slaves. That's when I say
right,
our. Okay, and
right,
I'm not talking about the people that migrate, the immigrants from Africa, not those guys.
right,
And being very specific here. So because a lot of us or our in our history was had been taken from Africa and dropped off in different places, and Jamaica was one of the places that the slaves were dropped off at.
right,
So so there's a technical difference if someone says, well, she's not Black American, but she's African American, and she's not obviously African American, right?
right.
But then what is African American? So that's kind of the because it's taking on a new meaning now because you actually have Africans here.
Right. Exactly
So
right.
how do you see the African American versus Black American thing?
Well, I was listening to someone recently, uh, Amanda Seal, actually, and she basically said that her definition is how you yourself personally identify. Um, if you are a person of African descent, then you pretty much have a choice to identify as black or not. Uh, and I mean, if we just talk about like the triangular slave trade, um, like that's a no-brainer that because you could have two people from the same tribe, the same location, the same family, even, right? That came from Africa and were dropped off in two different places, right? So whether or not you're from, the West Indies, you know, or you're from America, if you're a black person, I don't see much difference. Then not only that, um, blacks in general, including Africans, are aligned by a specific struggle, uh, which is that in the world there's a system in place um, which disenfranchises black people. Um,
Now, just,
and
just to be clear to the people that are listening, and I know people have heard the word, but explain what is disenfranchised. What is that?
Sure, sure. Disenfranchised means to take away the validity of that person's representation of themselves, right?
Okay.
That's like a simple way would be to look at it would be like um, I would have to prove to you who I am as a human being, as an intellectual, um, as a person of emotional value, um, my status, the way I see myself in the world, right? And generally speaking, um, Black people um, have to actually, uh, it's already taken for granted that there is no status, right? And I
Okay.
have to show you exactly who I am as a person, as a human being, my value, generally speaking.
Now, how does, given all this craziness right now, how we just had this battle. I guess we can call it a rap battle with Drake and Kendrick Lamar, right? Where it ended
Right,
up being, Drake is a biracial, right? But he ended up coming out on the losing end, and there's been sort of a consensus that he's not like us. Like that was the name of the
right,
song. And then
right.
the Kamala Harris comes in. Now, how do you distinguish between the two, between the Drakes and the Kamala Harris? Because they both have these mixed backgrounds. But what's the actual difference? Can you actually nail down what the differences were
Both,
between the two?
both. Well, you know what? I think, you know what? It's very hard because the reality is that um, there are many people who are Black who don't have a choice, right? You don't have a choice to
Ah, I
what
see. I
what
see your
as,
point. See your
as
point.
to what group, right? You can right you can take on, right? Um, Particularly in America, right? Like it's just not gonna fly, right? Like I don't know. Let's just say I'm half Black and half white, for example. My
Okay.
experiences, right? The way in which, generally speaking, I experience the world well, based on if I'm basing things from the outside looking in, I'm going to have similar experiences of Blackness, right? And generally speaking, unless I choose to um, disavow myself, right, from Blackdom, right, and even if I do, right, I'm still going to suffer the same consequences, right? You know, and so I think that because of that, the Black community can be um, harsh towards people that might at one point try to like take the easy way out, so to speak. Right? You might look at it as though you're trying to, let's say if you don't identify, if you don't completely identify as like, hey, I'm a Black person, and you try to identify somewhere else, and then maybe at a certain point you might realize that it could benefit you, so to speak, right? To say I'm Black, right? Um, then you might deal with a little bit of tension. And I don't know the whole situation, but I do know that at one point Drake himself identified with himself as Jewish. Now, again, to me, that doesn't particularly mean he didn't say I'm Jewish and Black, because I think that's a different situation, right? If he said, I'm a Black person that identifies as Jewish, right? We've had many Black people. Sammy Davis Jr. is one of the earliest that comes to mind, right? That were Black and Jewish, right? But I do think that there's a story, because I don't know the reality of it, that Drake, for example, at one point, you know, identified, on one team, so to speak, and then when it benefited him, found himself, back in the Black neighborhood. Um, and so I think that might be some of what he's experiencing. But Kamala Harris, you know, uh, I don't know that she ever walked such a line, right? I don't know if she ever switched or felt the need to switch. And her being a female, I would imagine she probably didn't have to choose anything. She could celebrate her Indian side and celebrate her black side equally. So so I think there is maybe a difference there.
So here's what I was thinking, and that, as you were talking, that Drake, because, and I guess Kamala too, and a lot of us, because I actually my makeup is very similar to Kamala Harris, right?
Yes,
Very similar. You can probably see it in my features. They're very
yes,
similar to Kamala Harris. My father, and then my mom. So I don't even want to get. I don't want to put all that business out there like that, but
yeah,
very similar, right?
right,
But I don't have. Let's shall we say a fob to get into
right,
that Jewish door, to get into that white door, to get into that other door, right? That perhaps Drake and perhaps Kamala has, right?
right,
So that's kind of, I think that's what you're saying is that,
yeah,
they have that luxury of being able to say, I can get into the door where the Black Americans are with this fob, but I can also use this other fob
exactly.
in this other door. And a lot of us thinking that the fob might work for us. You try and use it and it ain't open it. You're like, wait a minute, why can't I get in? I'm right behind Drake and I can't get in. Can't get in, but
There
my fob's
you
not. What you
go. That's exactly right. And in fact, there were other people. If you go down the whole Drake rabbit hole, there are other people in the music industry, right, that have no identification, right, in the black community whatsoever. Um, but through hip hop, right, they've kind of reclassified themselves, right, without kind of like promoting their actual background, but kind of
Okay.
reclassify themselves as, as black, so to speak, because it benefits. And, I don't have an opinion either way, but I know, for example, DJ Khaled has come under a lot of fire for that, right?
Oh wow.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, because of his unique background, and it's like, uh, but you're kind of camouflaging yourself in some kind of a way to benefit from the black community. And then the question always becomes, if that's the case, then what are you doing to show gratitude or to give back to the community that is giving you your success, right? And
And
I think that makes a difference too.
so I was walking on the beach this morning, and I live basically on the beach, basically, right next to the beach, in a condo next to the beach. And
Awesome.
so I exercise on the beach in the morning times between 4 a.m. 6 a.m. before the sunrise. But I want to see the sunrise, right?
Yeah,
I kind of got that kind of life right now. So I'm just
that's awesome.
just
Hey,
right.
that's a beautiful thing.
And so there's a guy in the building, happens to be Filipino. He's
Yeah,
probably my age or older.
right.
His wife, and I've seen him a couple times. He actually rescued me one time. I was trying to get in my locker that's in the basement, and I didn't have the key. So so he went to his house and came back with like a buzz saw, bzzz, right, and my lock, right. So it allowed me, and so
Wow.
then we became friends. So
Yes.
now every time I see him, he's always by himself. But every time I see him, I dap him up with like a unique, you know,
Right.
like the cool,
Yeah.
pat, pat,
Hey,
so,
that's it.
right. And so today I saw him with his significant other. As I was walking along the beach and they were walking along the beach, I'd never seen her before. But so this is a long story to get to a point. And so as he was walking by, I stuck my hand out to give him dap. The
Right.
norm, the normal, hey, give me dap, right?
Hey.
And I had this huge smile on my face, and he smiled back. And so the question here is this: Drake, DJ Khaled, and others that you say, are they using the soul of Black Americans to predicate the cool? When had they not used that part, they would not be viewed as cool.
100,000%. Exactly right. And this is one of this is the crux of what it means to be uh, black in America. and be black in many parts of the world, right? We set the precedent for the culture, right? We are everything that people want to be except for be who we truly are.
We're everything and nothing at the exact same time.
The same time. Completely. Exactly. Exactly right. So they take everything that's all the glitter, right? But none of the gold, right? And that becomes the issue, right? But then you may not, so you may want to benefit in every way except to have me as your neighbor, right? Except to adopt me as your friend, right? Except to invite me to your home or around your family, right? But you want every other aspect of that because every other aspect might make you appear to be uh, on the leading edge, right? Um, make you appear to be daring,
That's
right? Or
interesting. It's
bold,
interesting.
or
Do you really think it's still like that today? You really think it's still like that today?
it's still like that in so many ways. In so many ways. That's why the majority of the consumers of the most derogatory, and again, it depends on how you define hip hop, but the most derogatory rap tends to be young white males. They tend to purchase, right, the majority of that music, right? They're the top consumers,
But
right?
do
Because
you think they're doing it out of now? I'd heard a clip from maybe it was Adam Sandler. He said most Jewish guys actually want to be black. Did you hear that?
I hear
Um,
that.
Now I actually had it downloaded.
It's going to be the first woman president. And that's incredibly exciting. And, she's Indian, she's black, she's everything. You can be more than one thing. It's incredible. I'm Jewish and Irish. I wish I was black. Every white Jewish guy wishes he was black. I want just a decent person in the White House, a person who cares about democracy more than themselves, who doesn't lie.
So this was a guy that came out in support of Kamala Harris. I'm only going here to say that that's his opinion. I'm only going here to say,
Yes,
do you
right.
think that they're consuming that kind of music? Because right now, and I'm speaking to my white audience, there is an attack on white males, right?
Yeah,
And you can see it now. I'm not saying that Donald Trump is the reason, but
right.
when you're on the pyramid of consumption and you're the apex predator, everybody's
Yeah,
coming after you. Everybody's coming after you, right?
right.
So just because a person's white doesn't mean that they get these privileges, right? Because there's a lot of guys that I know that are my friends that are suffering from the struggling same type of social illnesses that young Black Americans are struggling. So the question is, do you think that they're consuming that music out of what they would like to be, or they're consuming that music because that's their voice, for the voice that they don't actually have anymore? And I know that's a tough question.
Yeah. Um, so I think that it could be both, right? I think that it could be all of the above. But uh but I'll push back on the idea of privilege, right? Because I think that privilege isn't necessarily predicated upon like your individual struggle. It's predicated upon, does your individual struggle have anything to do with the color of your skin? Does that make sense, right? Like me and you could both be struggling. I'm black, I'm white, but there are doors that are not open to me in any way because of the color of my skin, right? There's fears, right, that I have to deal with that are real fears, right, that exist in the world that I have to deal with because of the color of my skin, right? It doesn't mean that you and I both, you know, maybe won't reach a certain economic ceiling. It doesn't mean that you and I both um, might not have similar living conditions. It just means that that the barrier that exists has to do, one of the barriers that exists in my life has to do with the color of my skin. And for you, that one won't be, if that makes sense. You know, you know,
With that being the case, how do you achieve equality? Do you think that equality is best achieved by taking away the problems that we have, or by giving the same problems we have to the other side?
I think, you know what? I think truly don't know what the answer would be for equality. Um, but I can tell you this is that um, black people, and this is an extension um, of African roots, right? Generally speaking, black people have always been an inclusive people, right? And inclusive people, right? So generally speaking, you won't find that um, people will be excluded, right? From our media, from our church, from our, uh, you know, and I believe that from our social structures, right? And I believe that um, that's a spiritual thing. Um, and I believe that from a spiritual perspective, that's perhaps the direction in which, you know, we need to go. Um, you know, just, you know, I know that there's consequences to that, right? Generally speaking, for black people, because of exactly what we're talking about, right? Right? Like, economically, right? If people can come into our culture, right, into our anything that we begin to establish, right, and then either take over, right, or dominate it in some way, you know, we might lose financially, or in other ways, right? Whereas other cultures won't even allow that, so to speak, right? Like, you know, like, I don't like, you know, we talk about Jewish, for example. There's not very many avenues, right, that are primarily Jewish, uh, like Jewish in nature, that, right, like other groups might be able to kind of dominate, so to speak, right? Um, but I believe that from a spiritual perspective, eventually that will be the right way to support. Because at the end of the day, no one is truly black, no one is truly white. These are just identities we wear. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, we're all just spiritual beings. Um, you know, and I think it's all part of a bigger design, a bigger plan, so to speak.
Okay, so now we're talking about that. So let's get into that. What religion do you maybe you know practice? Just so people will kind of get an idea.
So, personally, I just identify as spiritual. That I would place myself as spiritual. Um, my family, my children, my wife, always Christian. I have a Christian background, you know, strong Christian background from, you know, my uh, parents and grandparents, and uh, you know, they're very much, you know, church based. But me myself personally, I consider myself spiritual.
Now let's talk about that. Let's talk about that because I don't practice any religion, but
Yeah.
I grew up. Mother was Southern Baptist. My father was a Muslim, right? So I see both sides of it. What happens in the spiritual realm at the moment you die?
Mm.
At the moment of death, is it a
Oh,
hum? Like, is it hum? Is it like, when you hang up the phone, you get that operator sound? Is it a transition period? Is there any noise going on? Like at the moment of death, what happens in the spiritual realm?
oof. Well, I think spiritually speaking, not much, right? And I say that to say, um, who said this? Was it Whitney Houston? Someone I just heard them say recently. Right? I heard the quote recently, but they said something like, uh, you know, it's an old quote that basically says that we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spirits having a human experience, right? So if you look at the spirit as like this much larger thing, and this, right, this representation of Ralph, right, is like one small aspect of the spirit trying to maybe um, experience um, something that's like mortality, right? If the spirit is something that would be, um, that's immortal, that's always been, that never died, that was never born, right? Something to that extent. Um, then this human being is just a small aspect of the spirit experiencing, trying to experience a little bit of flavor, right? Um, and so I don't think that there's really a big, for us, who deal with these minds are very small, right? There's so much fear associated with it, and so many stories, right? And we have all these ideas and beliefs that we concoct and we say, but the reality is that I think that in God's bigger plan, it's just, you know, it's not as significant as we hold it to be. Yeah.
Okay, so in the spiritual realm, and you have to sort of explain this to me because I'm not well versed at it. Can Okay, so we're thinking spirit, and I'm not thinking human, right? Because that puts
Yeah.
you in the body. So I'm just
Right.
thinking, and I'm not even quite even sure what a spirit is, but let's
Right.
could
Exactly.
now ants are alive. They function. They have their own reasons for being here. They're part of the ecosystem as we all are. Birds, also squirrels, uh, rabbits, crocodile. Can spirits also be in them?
I think everything is spirit. I think everything is spirit. Yeah. I think that there's the only separation is the separation that we conceptualize based on this idea that we are somebody, that we are like a thing of importance, or right, or like this identity is it matters, right? And we live our lives to like leave legacy, right? Like how are we going to be remembered? And we think about all that. But but the way I look at things is like if everything is God, right? And this is just the mind of God, right? This is just a play, right? And Ralph will be here for 100 years, 120 years, right? 130, right? And um, there's already been 10,000 years of human beings on the planet, right? Right? Maybe 30,000 years of plants and insects and all that other stuff. All of these things are just play in the mind of God, just play, you know. And I think that at a certain level, I believe, right, that I believe that's what meditation is about, right? This capacity to uh, recognize like who you truly are, because one thing that my one thing that really started my mind thinking about all of these things when I had transitioned from Christianity, so to speak, was I had a teacher, a philosophy teacher, and he basically said that everything changes, and uh, and he said, name to me one thing that exists that doesn't change. I couldn't think of it, right? He said, if you look at this chair, over 100 years, 200 years, this chair will be dust. And then eventually that dust will, become atoms again. The atoms will become parts of the stars and that kind of thing. Anything that exists changes. So if everything changes, then what is real, right? And I would say that none of this stuff that we call real is reality, right? But reality is something other than this. And I think that we do have the opportunity to experience reality without dying, so to speak. Um, the greater reality, that which doesn't change, that which remains, right? That which has always been. Um, and it's so funny. I actually heard this brother smart. He blew my mind. I don't know if you listened to Terrence Howard recently.
Yeah, I have.
Um, so Terrence Howard, and I know a lot of like hardcore scientists that disagree with a lot of what he says. But one of the things that he talks about are things like the ants. And he goes down the line of, of like if you break up our DNA and how many chromosomes we have, so to speak, right? Or how many strands of DNA we have. It's not very much, right? But he'll select other things like certain plants and certain animals, ants, and their string of DNA is much larger than ours, right? The information that they hold, right, biologically is much longer, right, than ours. So who's to say it's just our perspective that makes it look as though, right, we are the big ones or the great ones or the sentient ones or the understanding ones, but we truly don't know. You know, we truly don't know. Everything that we're saying is from our perspective. You know,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
yeah.
Now, the spirituality, is that something that you are planning on sort of instilling in your kids, or are you going to let the Christianity part take its course?
So the way I do it is I can still go to church and I just I don't lean them one way or another, they're just around dad, and dad doesn't know anything, you know. I just I do my own meditation, right? And I try to listen, I try to listen, I try to be quiet, and just try to learn myself, I do tell my children, the one thing I do tell my children is that no one knows the answers, right? No one is grown up, so to speak, right? Like, just don't take it for granted because you're only 5, you're only 6, right? And dad is 46, right? That dad is greater than you, or above you, or right, or has more wisdom than you. We're large, but we still have temper tantrums, right? We still don't
Right.
have control of emotion, right? Completely. We still don't know the answer to everything. So find out for yourself. You know, um,
Right.
you know, do your own exploration. I can't tell you what happens when I die, or when you die. I don't know. Dad doesn't know anything. You know, it just listen to your heart.
Now, while you're doing your meditating, do you is any of your supplements in assistance with that?
I usually no, usually no. Like I've heard a lot of different things, but I guess from what I've read and learned is that and if you're on that path, like the true spiritual path, that many of those things can get in the way, right? And like I've heard stories about like great spiritual masters that let's just say they would do certain practices, right? Or like they would go up into the wilderness and they would meditate for 20 years and they're able to do all these miraculous things, and in their mind they believe they've arrived, so to speak, right? They're enlightened, so to speak, and then they come back you know to society, and then they get into an argument with their wife, and then they realize I'm still here, you know what I mean? And so I've heard that like lots of times people can get lost in those things, right? They can get lost in those. So I tend to not, um, because all of those things would just be something in the way of the thing, whatever the thing is. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I'm gonna put up, and I want you to, because now we're gonna transition into supplementation, what it what it does to you, how it can help the body, perhaps even help the soul. I'm assuming, and I want you
Sure.
to explain to me, and to the audience, what these supplements are.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we can start from the top up here. Can you see that?
You know what? I actually have that right here. Is that pine bark extract?
Yes. What is
Okay,
it?
sure. So pine bark extract is really good for the body, for the brain. It's primarily an antioxidant, um, but it's also a nitric oxide booster.
Okay.
I'm really big into promoting um, blood flow, right? I think
Okay.
that's one of the keys to overall longevity.
Now, what about boron?
Boron. Boron is, in many studies, around 9 grams of boron per day has been known to raise levels of free testosterone. Right? Lots of times we have that SGBH, sexual,
Yeah.
sex finding, globulin
Yes.
hormone.
Yeah.
So boron helps to free up some of that testosterone for use.
Now, what about taurine?
So taurine that's something that's been linked to longevity. Find populations that taurine, which is a lot of fish and different things that um, live longer. It's very good for cardiovascular health as well.
Now, what about this? Was it magnesium? What are you using that for?
Sure. So magnesium, the majority of people, at least that live in the United States, and they have experience like the cold weather and the warm weather, um, have a, that's the number one deficiency in the United States, probably next to vitamin D3.
Okay.
So it's a good idea to supplement with magnesium. It's also bad for glycine, which is a calming hormone. So it's good to take at night before bed. Also take it, first thing in the morning.
Now, what about this? What's it? Acetyl L-carnitine?
Oh yes. So you have L-carnitine, um, and then you have acetyl L-carnitine. Acetyl L-carnitine is the form of carnitine that can cross the blood-brain barrier. So it's good for cognitive health, but it's also very good in terms of fat loss. It allows the body to utilize the fat.
What about HMB?
H and B is very good uh, for boosting muscular endurance. It's also good for preserving muscle. So if you train fasted, it will be a good idea to take H&B before you work out.
What about this cysteine?
Okay, so that NAC, N-acetyl L-cysteine, this is very good for. It promotes. It's a precursor to glutathione.
Okay.
So many people take glutathione orally. We found this that like unless you're getting direct glutathione injections,
Yeah.
its absorption is very low. You're
Yeah.
almost wasting your money. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's a precursor. If you take it, then your body can naturally produce a little more glutathione.
What about CLA?
CLA, that's in the fat loss region as well. CLA primarily comes from like safflower oil, but it's also found in dairy, and it helps the body to burn fat.
Beta alanine?
Beta-alanine has been known to increase, particularly for boxers, increase punching power, power overall. After supplementing with it for about 6 weeks, it can boost your gains in the gym.
What about lithium orotate?
So many of us, the lithium in our bodies is low. And we kind of need just a little bit of lithium. Many people that might be dealing with like mood disorders, they find that lithium can help them low dose lithium, right? 5 grams a day. It's also good for brain health and prevent like cognitive decline.
And how do you take creatine? Because I see this one of your stats. It's in your stat.
Yes. So creatine monohydrate. There's been a lot of new research on that. Uh, which is just find that dang near everybody on the planet can benefit from taking creatine.
You mean
Uh,
extra? Because I know you can get it in red meat.
exactly right. Right, exactly right. Extra creatine. Now, they're saying something like 200 male. I could potentially benefit from taking somewhere in the range of 20 grams of creatine per day. The creatine monohydrate, being the most studied form, can also cause a little bit of water bloating. So it's best to take it in small doses, like 2 to 3 grams throughout the day. But creatine is good for literally giving energy to many organs of the body, the brain, the heart, the kidneys, the liver. There's like countless benefits from creatine. It's even been linked to fat loss, a little bit of testosterone boost as well. And of course, the main thing is that it can allow you to push up to 20% more weight over time in the gym.
And this last supplement looks like betaine.
Oh, okay, yes, betaine. So this betaine anhydrous, this is actually so this is the trimethylglycine is the form of betaine that I'm using there. And that's been linked to longevity as well. But betaine also has been linked to fat loss, muscle gain, and also what we found is that consuming whey protein actually uh, diminishes the amount of a certain hormone in the body that glycine can. So taking that betaine is like a win-win situation.
Okay. It sounds like you're well versed on all these supplements, man. We spent an entertaining 40 minutes talking about a few different subjects. And I still got more questions to ask. So is it possible that I can get the brother back again um, for one more show and ask several more questions that I think a lot of people have?
I would love to. My
Okay.
pleasure.
I'm going to thank you for joining us on this episode of the Late Night Show. I'm going to extend my heartfelt gratitude out to my patrons, you yourself, for your unwavering support and your attention. Your contributions make my show possible. Be sure to tune in next time on the Late Night Show for all discussions, insights, and laughters. And until then, everybody stay awesome.